created 5,127 prototypes, only one of them being successful. Constantly used to put his family and home at risk and danger. Got deep in debt, and not once. This is all about James Dyson, successful man today. And here's his story. James Dyson, the founder of Dyson, was born on the 2nd of May in 1947 in the English town of Cromer in Norfolk in the UK, in the family of Alec and Mary Dyson. His parents met just before the start of the war. Alec Dyson met Mary at a local social event when she was only 17 years old. At that time, young people in love didn't have the opportunity to have long-lasting relationships. The Second World War began, and they quickly got married in 1941. Their honeymoon was pretty short because soon after their marriage, Alec went to war in Burma, and Mary volunteered for the Women Auxiliary Air Force. During the war, older children were born in the Dyson family, sister Alexandra and brother Tom. After the end of the war, in 1946, James' father returned from service in Burma, where he happened to be in the thick of the war. The head of the family returned without teeth or hair. Soon, James' parents rented part of the cold Victorian mansion, where they lived together with two other teachers' families. This is where James was born in 1947. James' childhood years were spent in a post-war atmosphere. Heating in the drafty houses of Norfolk was always insufficient, and the children didn't have new toys, television, or other entertainment. In those years, the Dyson family barely had enough money to feed themselves, unlike they had before. These were years of austerity. The parents were forced to grow vegetables on their own and keep poultry so they could somehow feed the family. In 1955, when James was 8 years old, he began studying at Gresham School, and one day, by chance, while walking with his father, he learned his father's terrible secret. James examined the tall bracket, and he found that his father was coughing violently as he walked around the corner. The father was forced to confess to James that he was very ill. He was diagnosed with throat and lung cancer. The only thing his father asked was not to tell his mother about it. He didn't want to disturb his relatives and arouse pity for himself. A year later, when James was 9 years old, his father, Alec Dyson, passed away at the age of 40. This loss had a profound effect on James and shaped his personality.
It didn't do to cry or show emotion, just a stiff upper lip. Ever since, a part of me has been making up for that painfully unjust separation from my father, and for the years he lost. Perhaps I had to learn quickly to make decisions for myself, to be self-reliant and willing to take risks.
After the loss of the head of the family, it was hard for the mother to raise 3 children alone and to put the children on their feet. She had to sew clothes. Sometime later, she managed to get a degree in English and become a teacher. James' parents were married for 15 years, but only really lived together for 3 years before his father was diagnosed with cancer. This could explain the mother's ability to survive on her own while raising 3 children. James' mother was gentle, loving, and very encouraging to children. Even though there was little money, the Dyson family tried to enjoy life, walking along the Norfolk coast, digging shells out of the sand, listening to music records, reading books, playing charades, and making all sorts of things. But in addition to entertainment, children also had to share a lot of household chores. Then there were no machines for gardening and cultivation. There was only a lawn mower and a shovel to dig a garden. The washing machine in those years was a stationary boiler in which the laundry was simply soaked and then rinsed in a large sink and fed into a hard-to-turn drum. As James would later say in his book,
The only motorized machine we had on the farm was an old upright vacuum cleaner with a cloth bag hanging from its handle. It was stinky, dusty, and inefficient. The thought of this haunted me for many years.
Ultimately, it was thanks to his parents that he desired to create something with his own hands, often in a whim and with almost no fear at all, became second nature to James. The school in Holt, where his father had previously taught, provided him with a scholarship for free education. With this in mind, having already gained fame, James will donate almost £19 million in gratitude to the construction of an education center in Gresham, contributing to the development of his native school and the popularization of science, technology, engineering, art, and mathematics among school children. In terms of school, James did pretty well. Although he was not putting in much effort and was favoring non-academic activities, he paid special attention to long-distance running and enjoying the beautiful landscapes of sandy beaches.
Yes, running taught me about determination, about not giving up, and particularly not giving up when everything seems hopeless, and everything is against you, and everything is difficult. That's the time you must double down, as they say. Really go for it, because success or the end is just around the corner.
Given the fact that his father, Alec, was a master of classical literature, and his older brother, Tom, studied literature at Cambridge, and his sister, Alexandra, devoted herself to medicine, James himself believed that after graduation, he should have become an academic or a surgeon. The idea of becoming a surgeon had a certain, albeit fleeting, appeal, but still, his main great love, besides long-distance running, was art. James has been painting seriously since the age of 9, and what he wanted was to go to art school. In the autumn of 1965, he was sent to London to begin a course at the Byam Shaw School of Drawing and Painting. It was where he met his future wife, Deirdre.
She was modest, yet incredibly talented, a far better painter at the Byam Shaw than I was. She's quite the warmest human I've ever met, with an undying curiosity and enthusiasm for life. Her instinctive understanding of the emotions of others is utterly endearing.
As his studies at Byam Shaw drew to a close, James' instructor gave him the idea of furniture design department at the Royal College of Art. It was 1965, and design was something out of the ordinary and unknown. James applied, passed the exam, passed the interview, and was thrilled to learn that he was accepted. But no matter how exciting the news was, they all were overshadowed by love. He thought Deirdre was a beautiful girl by nature. She was modest, but with ever-burning curiosity and passion for life. And also an incredibly talented artist. James' mother was shocked that her son fell in love so early before he graduated from college. But she quickly fell in love with Deirdre herself, and in 1967, the young couple decided to get married. As James himself says in his book,
Now, this may be a consequence of a little earlier, but 5 years of studying is a long time, and we just could not wait any longer.
Later, he entered the Royal College of Art, where his craving for engineering grew throughout the entire period of study. The Royal College of Art was a real discovery for James in many ways. At that time, engineers were not designers, because designers were mainly concerned with appearance, but were extremely far from engineers and inventors, who gave structures to things and created their work. James learned in college that art and intelligence, invention and action can be all at once. He was dreaming to become an engineer, designer, and a composer at the same time. James took over the furniture and interior project, meeting interesting people, including Joanne Littlewood. Joanne was the founding director at the Theatre Workshop at the Shabby Theatre Royal in Stratford, as well as director and actor with a passion for building a new children's theatre. James proposed a variant in the form of mushroom. Its spherical surface was formed by aluminium tubes, built in the shape of a triangle, but the project never came to fruition. The development didn't go beyond the drawing board. However, through this project, James met Jeremy Fry, an engineer and founder of the Rodrock Manufacturing Company. Jeremy was a passionate inventor, an infectious entrepreneur. He offered James a job, as he was always interested in talented young people and enthusiasts who wanted to learn. After several small projects, Jeremy Fry entrusted James with the development and sale of the high-speed ship called Sea-Track. Having previously worked on it himself, Jeremy wanted to sell it for military purposes. The first Sea-Track designs were made from plywood, but James had to modify them and make them from fiberglass. Even though he knew nothing about the process at that time, he took full responsibility for technology and product development, as well as its production and marketing. Also, at Jeremy's insistence, James continued his studies at the Royal College of Art, so Sea-Track became his course project in the first stage. For a student of architecture and interior design, it was a curious experience, right? Fortunately, the teachers didn't interfere with James in choosing a new direction. Through the experience of working in a marine track, James realized that sales and production are in fact two sides of a coin. In his senior year of college, James' project was the wheelboat, a boat with drum wheels instead of propeller riffles. The wheels provided propulsion and buoyancy and allowed the boat to cross land and sea. We can say that it was kind of amphibious vehicle. After finishing his studies, despite waiting for a job offer as a designer, James stayed with Jeremy and Rodorg to work on the limited production and sale of the C-Track and devoted much of the next 5 years to that. James was soon promoted to the position of general manager with a salary of £2,500 and a company car at his disposal. It seemed surprising to James that Jeremy would entrust him with this job. Jeremy became a real mentor to James. He was a role model and in many ways influenced his development.
Jeremy was a great engineer and an inspiring entrepreneur. He was always happier making things in the machine shop than he was sitting around a boardroom table or mingling with high society. He was interested in young people or anyone enthusiastic who wanted to learn. He loathed smugness and experts, by which he meant those who want you to believe that they know everything about a subject, when the inventive mind knows instinctively that there are always further questions to be asked and new discoveries to be made.
James had traveled with sails around the world. Marine tracks were in high demand for various purposes. Life has certainly been exciting. James was absorbed in his work at Rodorg and also became a father. His daughter Emily was born in 1971 and his son Jake 2 years later. By that time, James was a director of a company with a large salary, but he realized that interest in the invention of the C-Track was fading. In addition, James was becoming more and more convinced that he no longer wanted to embody other people's ideas, design by order, or give his projects to other people for implementation. He wanted to control his complete production cycle. Although he loved and respected Jeremy very much and enjoyed working with him at Rodorg, James decided to go his way. And in 1974, with a family and 2 small children, a solid overdraft, and a colossal mortgage, he left an interesting job and went into the unknown. James was very fortunate that Deirdre supported him and allowed the family to plunge into the unknown, into a world of debt, risk, and potential poverty. There were no incentives to start your own business back then, and venture capital didn't exist. This was long before Silicon Valley startups. Then it was the other way around. Investors earned big money on interest from their capital. They didn't want to risk it in production. However, James still decided to go against the tide and become a manufacturer, an entrepreneur. In 1974, he was at his crossroads. After leaving Rodorg, James purchased an old stone farmhouse for his family in Gloucestershire, which meant 2 things for him: the end of long-distance travel and the beginning of hard physical work. The house required serious repairs, but there were also undoubted advantages because the construction and the need to restore the old house boosted the idea of his invention, designed to make everyday life better. One day, while working in the garden, James was forced to overcome paths and muddy ruts with a wheelbarrow, which was difficult to manage. He became so angry. When his wheelbarrow was loaded, it tended to tip over to its side. Cement mortar was leaking from the wheelbarrow. Its tubular frame was constantly burrowing into soft soil, and its sharp edges scratched and damaged everything on its way. James decided that he needed to invent a better wheelbarrow. He wanted to design and rethink it from scratch, and it turned out well. His ball barrow wheelbarrow featured a molded plastic container on a steel frame and 1 large spherical plastic wheel, which provided increased maneuverability. It made the wheelbarrow more comfortable when used on soft soil and more stable under heavy loads on uneven surfaces. Now, James needed to raise some money to set up a company and put his invention, the bell barrow, into production. James went with an offer to his brother-in-law, Stuart Kirkwood. Stuart was ready to act as surety and co-owner of the Kirk Dyson company. Deirdre allowed James to mortgage the house on credit, and with the money from the bank, already deeply in debt, James set up his first factory in a barn next to Pixie on their family farm. Despite C-Track sales experience, James once again had a lot to learn with ball barrow. There were many questions: how, where, and for how much to sell it. At that time, there were no nationwide chains of DIY stores or garden centers. So at first, James had to go around every hardware store in the area. They only bought 1 or 2 cars at a time to sell, and James had to spend a lot of time finding distributors of his products, who also received a larger share of the profits. On top of that, James could only offer wholesalers 1 product, so James had very little money left. It was a hopeless business model. James also says that it was quite a shame when buyers laughed at his design. The bright wheelbarrow looked too playful for those used to traditional metal cars. However, the color bloom in the 60s played an important role in development and popularization of a new generation of consumer products. The wheelbarrow was designed to stand out from the old-fashioned competition and still got the British design Council kite mark. At that time, the triangular black and white icon attached to a product was a sign of officially approved good design. However, over time, thanks to the great effort of James, wheelbarrow captured more than half of the garden wheelbarrow market in the UK. Production moved from a farm to a really large factory, and the annual turnover of the business grew to £600,000. But James made a big mistake, which he later deeply regretted. By founding his company, which was called Dyson, he transferred the patent for wheelbarrow not to himself, but to a company in which there were other investors, who he attracted earlier. Ultimately, investors took control of the shares, with no control over the company and no patent for his invention. For no apparent reason, James found himself kicked out of his company. Having lost the company, the Dyson family, already with 3 children and a large mortgage, was again penniless, and James was left without patents for his invention, work, and income. While working on wheelbarrow, James had a new idea on his mind. Then, at the factory, electrically charged epoxy powder was used to paint the steel frame of the future wheelbarrow. That's right, it was powder coating. The problem with this process was the overspray of particles and dry powder paint flying all over the factory. The first solution at that time was an electric fan that sucked in paint particles, but this was ineffective as the fabric filter quickly clogged, and the production line had to be stopped every hour to remove and empty the clogged membrane filter. Then, James was told about the existence of the Cyclone separator, which collects dust and flying particles due to centrifugal force without the need for a membrane filter. Later, after noticing such an installation in action near a timber merchant, James at night, with a flashlight and a notebook, made his way into his workshop to see how it works and sketched a diagram of the separator and exhaust ducts, and was also able to sketch the main details of the structure, evaluate the dimensions and proportions. Indeed, the Cyclone separator collected dust, but most importantly, didn't clog. The principle of centrifugal dust removal of a Cyclone separator seemed to James quite exciting. The idea of using directional airflow to spin dust particles under the action of the centrifugal force seemed magical, although the technology itself was hardly new. It was this incident that prompted James to think about a revolutionary vacuum cleaner. Left without a job in 1979, James went freelance. Financially, things looked pretty bleak. He had no income, but had a large mortgage to pay off. The family grew vegetables in their garden. Deirdre helped her husband as much as she could. She sewed clothes, taught drawing lessons, wrote, and sold her paintings. For the next 15 years, the Dyson family lived in debt and credit. And what is amazing is that James did not give up. But on the contrary, there was a huge energy. He knew what he wanted to do and continued to do it. To develop his Cyclone vacuum cleaner, he analyzed the operation of one of the most popular and powerful vacuum cleaner models of the time and realized that the dust bag acts as a filter, trapping dust inside the bag and allowing air to pass through its pores. And he also noticed that the pores of the bag clog very quickly from the moment the first dust hits, as a result of which there is a sharp decrease in the suction capacity of the vacuum cleaner itself. Besides, as it turned out, the bag full indicator doesn't mean at all that it is full of dust. It registers the pressure when the pores of the bag are clogged. And in fact, it only means that the pores of the bag are clogged, but not the bag itself. Considering the cost of such bags and the fact that the vacuum bag business itself was very profitable, James, as a consumer, felt cheated and angry, and as an engineer, he became interested in this. James remembered the problem of a clogged fabric filter in the manufacture of the wheelbarrow tubular frame and the giant Cyclone he had built in the factory, and decided that he could try making a much smaller version to replace the clogging bag in the vacuum cleaner. James made one miniature Cyclone out of cardboard, just 300 millimeters high, fastened it with a duct tape, replaced the fabric bag hanging from the handle of an old upright vacuum cleaner with the simple Cyclone, and went to Jeremy to show him his idea. Jeremy gladly supported James, helped to draw up a business plan and calculate the budget for the implementation of his idea. In addition, he invested the first money so that James, pushing himself, could raise some more money and start work. In the end, by borrowing money and selling his precious garden as a building plot, James managed to raise the necessary amount. From that moment on, the serious business of developing Cyclone technology will begin. As for the production workshop, James organized it right next to the house, on the site of an old 18th century carriage house. Yes, at first it was smelly and rotten, but James managed to put it in order and organize his workshop there. James bought rolls of sheet metal to prototype brass cyclones before soldering or reverting them together, and set about prototyping and modifying his invention. His goal was to create a cyclone capable of capturing particles as small as 0.5 microns or smaller, similar to cigarette smoke. It took him 5 years to do this. Throughout this time, his family supported him, the children worked with him. Deirdre continued to give drawing lessons to help support the family's financial well-being. Once work on the Cyclone was completed, he was able to move on to designing the rest of the vacuum cleaner. Testing and making one change after another took a lot of time. It is authentically known that James Dyson made 5,127 prototypes of his vacuum cleaner.
5,126 so-called failures were part of the process of discovery and improvement before getting it right on the 5,127th time.
James thought to increase the Cyclone's ability to capture even smaller microscopic particles. In the process of testing a huge number of Cyclone prototypes, he determined the correct cone angle, the optimal Cyclone diameter, the best inlet and outlet diameters, the ideal inlet channel shape, and the optimal Cyclone length. By the end of 1982, James had a fully working prototype of the main cyclonic part of the vacuum cleaner. Now, he took up the creation of all the other parts. It is worth noting that at the time, there were two types of vacuum cleaners, vertical and cylindrical. The vertical type had the rotating brush roll in the head of the vacuum cleaner and had to be pushed in front of you when cleaning. The disadvantage of the design was that such a vacuum cleaner was not intended for anything other than cleaning carpets, and its nozzle didn't allow for cleaning the floor right up to the baseboard. In addition, the suction power of the upright vacuum cleaner was weak. The second type of vacuum cleaner is cylindrical, had to be pulled across the floor with a tube and a hose when cleaning, had a strong suction when a new bag was present, but usually had only a flat floor nozzle and was less effective at cleaning carpet. James decided to put a cylinder-type motor in a rack with a brush head for good suction. Thus, his vacuum cleaner could compete with two other vacuum cleaners at once. The handle of the vacuum cleaner detached from the body and extended inside the pull hose, and was equipped with an automatic changeover valve to divert suction from the cleaner head to the hose, and vice versa. In addition, the Dyson device had an undeniable advantage. Thanks to the Cyclone, the vacuum cleaner retained its suction capacity over time. Having finished designing his vacuum cleaner, James thought about patents for new features and licenses for his Cyclone inventions. He attempted to license the design from all the major British, European, and American vacuum cleaner companies, and went around every major company he thought might buy his idea. He negotiated with Electrolux, Hotpot, Miele, Siemens, Bosch, IG, Philips, and others, but no one wanted to take out a patent for his invention. James was disappointed and realized that they didn't want to do something new and unusual at all. On the contrary, they were still interested in profiting from the sales of disposable vacuum cleaner bags, which at that time in Europe alone exceeded $500 million. This realization inspired James to oppose his invention to ordinary vacuum cleaners and reputable companies. James decided to convince consumers to stop spending big bucks on replacement bags, which by the way are made of non-biodegradable plastic, and turned the attention of consumers to his amazing bagless vacuum cleaner that provides constant suction and long life. Rodork, having watched James' developments all along, decided to take on the project and license the design from James. Rodork decided to produce the first vacuum cleaner in Italy. It was a pink cleanest Rodork Cyclone. Why do you think it was pink? Simply because this color was chosen to make it stand out from all other vacuum cleaners on the market. Meanwhile, after selling the vacuum cleaner license, Jeremy and James founded a company called Prototypes Limited. With funds received from Rodorg, they expanded the production hall, acquiring a new large carriage house for their workshop, having immersed themselves in work on all projects to improve an amphibious vehicle capable of moving on land and water. They managed to realize their plans. The new water jeep designed by James could rival the Sea Track in speed. After conducting additional tests for efficiency and speed, they applied for a patent, but the patent office considered that the drawings and designs relating to these inventions should be kept in a safe within a safe. James and Jeremy were not allowed to operate them commercially, as they were considered to be of military importance. The same thing happened with the water jeep, the invention of the hovercraft, and other inventions. Frustrated by the rejection of further developments, James and Jeremy set out to create a power wheelchair that was better and more comfortable than those in the market. Conventional wheelchairs of the time had 2 fixed wheels and 2 swivel wheels. Their management was unpredictable. James made all 4 wheels steerable, which gave the wheelchair controlled handling and a very tight turning radius. The stroller could rotate around its axis, the batteries were installed on top of the platform, and the chair was on top of the batteries. In addition, James' seat folded for transport, and the electronics and tilt wheel steering geometry was complex and interestingly innovative for the time. But still, having developed the prototypes, James left the project and entrusted it to Jeremy, while he focused on his vacuum cleaner. Unfortunately, his first cleanest Rodorg Cyclone vacuum cleaner was not a commercial success. The reason was that Rodorg chose the wrong person to manage their promotional campaign, and only 550 units were sold. One of the problems with an inventor selling licenses to companies is that while they may be interested in you signing the license, they might later decide to reject it for various reasons. This is the most frustrating experience for an inventor. James needed to look for other licensees. The new company with which it was possible to agree on the sale of a license was the American marketing company Amway. After James handed over all the drawings, know-how, prototypes, and confidential information to Amway, they decided to terminate the contract and file a fraud claim to get back the money they had paid. Later, James learned that Amway took advantage of his idea and realized a copy of his vacuum cleaner on their own. But at that time, the lack of funds didn't allow James to fight Amway in the US courts. As a result, he had to return all the money and pay legal fees, which drove James into even more debt. At the same time, in 1984, the financial advisor of his partner Jeremy, who considered the vacuum cleaner a waste of money and time, pushed Jeremy to the decision to sell his share. James was able to buy out Jeremy's share by selling the carriage house and borrowing more money from the bank. Although James had 100% of the shares, he was sad to realize that Jeremy had decided to withdraw from the joint project. But James understood Jeremy, and his fear of losing a lot during the lawsuits was great. After all, it was James' invention and had to bear the cost. Despite everything, James was extremely grateful to Jeremy for many years of support, and even after ending their partnership, they managed to maintain a friendly relationship. James was left alone with his debts, problems, and the unrealized project to create a vacuum cleaner. It seemed that this was the end. But by a lucky chance, a small company from Japan called Apex noticed the only photo of a moved Cyclone vacuum cleaner in the back pages of a journal on a plane. And in 1985, James, having bought the cheapest air ticket, flew to Tokyo for negotiations. James was very pleased that Apex appreciated every detail and all the distinguishing features of his vacuum cleaner. He noted that in this company there was a real love for the creation of technology. James has spent a lot of time in Japan improving the cleaning head of the vacuum cleaner and the separation system. After that, Apex finally started its production. Apex kept the pink and lavender colors as they made this vacuum cleaner stand out from the existing ones. The vacuum cleaner was named G-Force. The G-Force vacuum cleaner hit the market in 1986, becoming an instant design classic and status symbol in Japan, and continued in production until 1998. At the same time, in 1987, Peter Gamek and the Siemens Job, graduates of RCA and Imperial College Engineering Design, joined James in the carriage house. Thanks to royalties from Apex in Japan and through various consulting services, James was already able to pay Pete and Siemens wages. From then on, James made it a point to keep in touch with the colleges and go to student tests on the end of each academic year, which was a great way to find talented, young design engineers. So later on, James adhered to his principle and invited young engineers and graduates to work in his company. James was obsessed with the idea of his production, but it was very difficult to go this way. As he continued to work on what would eventually become the best-selling DC-01 vacuum cleaner in early 1992, his carriage house was kind of a mess. The workshop was equipped only with a lathe and milling machine, workbenches, and tables with 3 computers in the hayloft. James was forced to look for money to organize their production. Venture capitalists proved to be useless. He went to meetings with investors, but investors didn't want to take risks, preferring to work with businesses that promised a quick return on investment. James approached them with requests for cash in exchange for equity or shares in the company. Desperate and without hope of success, he again decided to take the greatest risk. He got the bank to approve a loan of £600,000. The bank manager later admitted that he approved his application after asking his wife how she felt about the idea of a bagless vacuum cleaner, to which she said that this is brilliant. James mortgaged everything he owned, including the house. However, according to James, this was the last chance to make his invention work and to show faith in what he had done. It was surprising that Deirdre agreed with her husband and supported him once again, even realizing that in case of failure, they could be evicted to the street with their 3 small children. As soon as James received the money from the bank, he founded the company Dyson Appliances Limited, signed contracts with various tool manufacturers, and quickly began to put the vacuum cleaner into production. The first industrial vacuum cleaner bearing the Dyson name began rolling off the assembly line in January 1993. The organization of production was completed in record time. The production line was located in half of the plant in Wickham, and the carriage house was still the headquarters, where engineers, in addition to the invention, were responsible for accounting, purchasing, and logistics. Fortunately, there were 2 sales assistants and a staff assistant. 3 months later, James rented a former post office in Chippenham and moved the production line there. Well, the impromptu factory was still far from ideal. The building had 29 roller doors and was very cold in winter. And when more space was needed for production, James bought a huge second-hand tent the size of a parking lot and rented containers. It was not an easy start for the company. And yet, in July, Dyson launched the DA001 vacuum cleaner and shortly thereafter released an improved version of the DC01. The first sales of vacuum cleaners began with big postal catalogs. The vacuum cleaner section was in the back pages, at the bottom, with small square images that didn't even have room to describe the features and specifications of the product, just the label DC01 bagless. And the potential savings figures, £1.99 per month instead of £199. And yet, within 18 months, James' new vacuum cleaner became the best-selling product in the UK market. Despite the success, James constantly thought about improvements and continued to develop new, more advanced models.
Permanently dissatisfied is how an engineer should feel.
Dyson has become a great example of a fast-growing manufacturing company, showing dynamic growth, doubling its production volume every year. At the same time, James understood that one cannot stand still, and such a large growth implies globalization, because to secure success, a quick entry to foreign markets is needed, and the rest of the United Kingdom simply cannot provide the necessary demands and will not allow supporting large an investment much needed for the continuous development of its technologies and engineering research. Within a few years, James brought the company to the markets of Australia, Germany, France, and Italy, and then followed by success in the United States. The popularity of Dyson products grew at such a rapid rate that production was not able to expand to meet the customer demand that was already being seen around the world. James never intended for his company to stop there and end up with vacuum cleaners. The development of Cyclone technology can be said to have been only the first step in the development of many other innovative technologies, and it was on this basis that the best products in various fields was subsequently developed. From a young age, James was fascinated by the idea of creating useful and functional products that contribute to the conservation of natural resources, ecology, and medicine. In a global sense, he has always been concerned about the impact of technology on the health and quality of life of people and the environment. For example, the fact that disposable paper towels for drying hands are ubiquitous, but not recyclable and sent to landfill represented James as wastefulness, because maintaining a continuous cycle of cutting down millions of trees for dry hands is real madness. In an attempt to remedy the situation and get the message across, James develops and brings to market an innovative alternative, a series of powerful electric hand dryers. His dryers are truly the most amazing. In just 10 to 12 seconds, wet hands become completely dry. In addition, Dyson's high-tech dryers are hygienic and equipped with HEPA filters that trap the smallest bacteria. Well, if we talk about numbers, then the cost of buying an electric hand dryer in the future more than pays for the cost of paper towels. A no less functional and amazing invention of James was a bladeless fan. This technology provides a more uniform and smooth airflow, and the absence of the usual rotating blades make it safer to use in places where there are children or pets. Subsequently, based on these developments, Dyson will introduce indoor air purifiers. As you may have noticed by now, James doesn't do anything slipshod, and before launching his product on the market, he creates a lot of prototypes. This time, there were 2,605 of them. With internal sensors, this device can monitor air quality and report on its status in real time, and 3 levels of filtration can capture 99.95% of ultrafine particles so that the purified air circulates evenly around the room, cooling or heating the room. And of course, many people showed interest in Dyson products precisely with the release of a new supersonic hair dryer. Few people think about it, but 103 engineers work on the creation of a hair dryer for 4 years, developing 600 prototypes. In total, the Dyson company spent $71 million to develop its hair dryer, of which $58,000 was spent on natural curves for tests. And this is all to achieve the most effective drying, fast, high-quality styling, and protection of the hair structure from overheating. But Dyson's development in the beauty field didn't end there either, and after a while, the guys would release bombing innovative stylers and hair straighteners. Along with the beauty industry, the development of vacuum cleaners continues, and every year they will improve more and more. The latest models will become wireless and will have improved filtration. With each new model, designers improve suction power. There will also be a laser to detect microscopic dust. In addition, a robot vacuum cleaner will be created with a 360-degree vision system, thanks to which it understands where it has already been and where it is going. Each processor allows you to create a map of the house and update it during each cleaning. LED lighting helps it work even in low light, and the use of caterpillars instead of wheels allows the robot vacuum cleaner to move on any type of floor surface. In all this hectic activity of engineers, inventors will not stand aside, and the son of James, Jake Dyson, for several years created an innovative intelligent lamp with a built-in motion sensor that reacts to the presence of a person and turns off when there's no one around for a long time. Jake will also release his lamp under the Dyson brand, after which he will join his father's team and will take an active part in the company's affairs. It should be noted that not all experience of the company are destined to be realized. For example, a rather cool project to produce its electric car, which Dyson launched in 2016, was put on hold 3 years later. James originally planned to invest over £2 billion to develop a radical and unusual electric vehicle. Half of the funds were to go to the creation and development of the car, and half to development of its electric batteries. It was also planned to create a huge factory and build it motorways for testing an electric car. Engineers have developed a fantastic electric car, but it will not hit the roads since in 2019 the company refused to work on the project. But what went wrong? The answer is simple. James concluded that the project was not commercially viable. But according to James, the company would continue to work on battery technology that was being developed for an electric car. Also, an interesting fact, in March 2020, when the COVID-19 pandemic began, Dyson engineers stopped all ongoing projects to develop their ventilator that will help save lives. They did it in just 30 days, and the company spent £20 million to develop the ventilator. At the moment, One of the most successful developments, of course, is air-purifying headphones. Initially, the idea of this invention was to provide a person with clean, high-quality air right on the go. Thanks to the air purification built in the set of smart headphones, and also to protect its owner from the noise and hum produced during construction, the operation of machines, motors, and aviation, noise pollution is not a myth, and it causes tangible harm to health. Also, the atmospheric air in many cities and industrial areas contains many harmful, volatile compounds that negatively affect our well-being, causing various allergic reactions and asthmatic diseases. The purpose of Dyson headphones is to clean the air you breathe from various pollutants, dust, gas, pollen, and other volatile organic substances, as well as protect against noise. The device itself is equipped with two compressors that are installed in the ear cups. These compressors rotate, drawing in air from outside, then the filters remove the particulate matter and gases from the air. Further, the purified air passes down and circulates in a circle, providing the person with access to clean air, and the exhaled air exits through the mesh. Dyson inventors spent 5 years testing and building hundreds of prototypes of earphones to ultimately create a product to be truly proud of. In general, the development of technology and the support of education have always been important aspects of James' philosophy. In his interviews, he often repeats that development never ends and that he is still learning. So, for decades, James Dyson solved a systematic problem, the lack of engineers in the UK. In 2002, he founded the James Dyson Foundation, a charity with a simple mission: to challenge misconceptions about engineering and encourage more young people to consider a career in engineering. Over the next 2 decades, the James Dyson Foundation worked to meet this challenge by providing free educational resources. Today, the foundation establishes international competitions and takes part in charity, helping schools and universities. Along with this work, the foundation supports major initiatives to improve engineering education. Also, a special achievement can be called the establishment of the James Dyson Prize. His award is an international design and engineering award that encourages and inspires the next generation of design engineers. In addition, this is a great chance for a young, talented engineer-inventor to get media attention for his invention, to start his career, earn the respect of colleagues, and gain self-confidence to create new inventions. James strongly believes it is useful and important to teach people the engineering structure of the world and to inspire children and students to create new inventions.
Above all, how can we avoid being duffers? It comes from working away single-mindedly at solving a problem, however many setbacks befall us, even if it means that 5,127 prototypes and retaining an open mind. Remember that there is nothing wrong with being persistently dissatisfied or even afraid. We should follow our interests and instincts, mistrusting experts, knowing that life is one journey of learning, often from mistakes. We must keep on running, and we really can do better.
It all comes to a simple conclusion: we can't be always right. Stay on the same track and accomplish every goal without mistakes in the way. Success is about hard work. Even if we fail 5,126 times, there will be one, and perfect one. Keep up learning, guys. Success is just the number of attempts.